But truly, I truly believe that that we can get to where we are the best education system in the land and one for the rest of the nation to follow. We have some ideas, and it's time for us to be sure that we are making good on our promise to every student in North Carolina that they're given a sound basic education and they're prepared for adulthood when they cross that stage at graduation.
Great, thank you. I want to go ahead and mention to you that we are recording this session. We ask that you not record it. The host will be recording and maintaining a copy of the recording. Michelle, we only have a few days left until Election Day. So
Yay.
let's get started with a question that sums it all up, and then we'll dive into some more specific topics, okay?
Sure.
What do we stand to gain if Mo Green is elected, and what will the education system look like if you're elected?
Well, I have to say, I've been on the stage a lot with Mo Green, and his statements for why he's running is he wants to celebrate the system, fully fund the system, and because Roy Cooper asked him to run. And so he has not put forth really any changes that he wants to make beyond the fact that he believes that we need more money in the system. So I'm pretty much the diametric opposite of him in terms of the fact that I believe that we have got to focus on safety and discipline in the classroom. We need to focus on academics and character development rather than the political and social activism that we've seen that's usurped our time and our attention in the classrooms. And we need to expand the vocational programs. I would like to see every junior and senior in North Carolina have an opportunity to work half the day and get paid for that, and then take their core classes the other half of the day. I think it will enhance the desire for businesses to come to maybe some of our smaller and more rural counties in North Carolina and to promote economic growth, as well as I believe that money absolutely matters. But with us right now consuming more than 50% of all of the state tax money going toward K through 12 education, I think we need to be sure that it's directed in the right way and not just ask for more. That's why I intend to audit, first starting with the DPI and then our central offices and even our 115 individual districts, to figure out how we can make sure that every dollar that we're spending starts first with student needs, with classroom resources, and paying the boots on the ground staff that are with our students each and every day. And if that means we have to get rid of some people at the top who don't have a direct impact on our children's education, their academics, and their career preparedness, then that's what we're going to do. We're going to cut from the top rather than the bottom. So I think I think it's great to come from an outside perspective. I say outside only because I am not a part of the educational industrial complex. It has grown tremendously in the administrative and the bureaucratic side, while we have been losing students and staff in staggering numbers here in North Carolina. I think we have a top-down problem and we need a bottom-up solution, and that's what I am going to bring to this. And my opponent just wants to do more of the same.
Okay, thank you. I want to remind everyone, we ask you please to be respectful and cut your camera on. If your camera is not working, please message us. You'll be able to do that through the chat box, I believe. Michelle, you've gotten a lot of criticism for saying that the education system is failing our schools. What do you mean when you say that?
Well, and I talked to superintendents a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to share with them that is not saying that the people are failures. I'm saying that the bureaucracy, the administration, the focus of our system, as I said, the top down, has been failing our students. And that's because I believe that the test of whether or not we're being successful really is how well are our students performing, how well equipped are they for adult life. And when we look at the fact that we have some of the lowest literacy rates in math and in reading ever recorded in North Carolina history across all demographics of students, we have to say that is failing. We're failing to provide our students a quality education so that they are prepared when they cross that graduation stage. And that's what I'm saying. When we're looking at the nearly 1,500 teachers that were assaulted on the job last year, that is a failure to protect them and to bring discipline and order back to our classrooms. When we look at the 84% increase in drug use, in gang activity, in violent crime just in the last 5 years within our schools, the bullying epidemic, the increase in anxiety and depression and self-harm and suicide attempts within our youth, it's been going up every year. Those are ways that we are failing our students. And that's what I'm referring to when I say this is a failing system for our young people.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure.
We have a lot of questions tonight about school funding and your talk about administrative bloat. You mentioned that earlier. What do you mean by administrative bloat, and how does that impact the students and the teachers? How would you change things?
Well, when you look at statistically over the last 20 years, we have increased the amount of spending on administrators 267%, and we've only increased our spending for our teachers, for example, 70%. And so that is what I'm talking about, the disparity, where we can say we need more money, but if it's all going into these administrative roles and it's never trickling down into the classrooms, then that's what I'm saying is we have administrative bloat. And that's one of the ways that when I'm saying we need to figure out how we're spending money, it's not just going to be the actual dollars, but that is going to be important and that is going to be done. The other thing that we really need to look at is program evaluation. The government is really good at offering us a new program and a new program. Oh, you have a problem? Let's just give you a new program. The problem with that is we often don't get rid of the other programs that were not successful. So we have been funding directors and we've been funding a lot of administrative staff for programs that we've had on the books for 20 and 30 years. And what we need to do is we need to quell those. We need to say, if you cannot prove that you have, in the last 5 years, statistically helped our students with academic success, character development, or career preparedness, then we need to cut that program and put those funds towards something that is helping our students to succeed.
Gotcha. So while we're still talking about funding, the big topic is teacher pay. I know that was certainly important to me and still is as a retired teacher.
Yes.
So there's a lot of talk about teachers being underpaid, and yet whenever there's a raise approved by the General Assembly, it's usually only 2%, maybe 2.5%. What do you think teachers should be paid as a base salary, and how could you at DPI work to increase that?
Well, and this is an advocacy role, and I've already been speaking with the General Assembly members, specifically in the Senate and in the House, in the K through 12 committees. And we actually have discussed raising that base pay. I would love to see it start at $55,000. And then what we need to do is we need to increase the advanced teaching roles. We need to increase the opportunities for teachers to have increased income, whether that is more face-to-face small group tutoring time, whether that's teaching ESL classes in the evening to parents, because I would like to expand that so that we can strengthen that parent-teacher connection, as we have so many more students that do not speak English as their first language entering into our school systems here in North Carolina. In addition, I'd like to create kind of a middle management, if you will, within all of our schools, so that you have teacher leads, so that essentially that teacher that has 10 or 15 years of experience, you can get paid maybe $20,000 more, and you are going to be in charge of all of the teachers within first grade or within second grade, for instance. And then you are the go-between between you and the principal. And that's going to help communication. It's going to help to get the teachers the resources they need to help the students. And it's not going to be just at the end of a year or a 15-minute sit down when the principal happens to come into your classroom and they're going to evaluate your entire year of teaching within a 15 or 20-minute block. And that's going to help that, I think. I think it's going to make, and also just mentorships. I think we need to be sure that those new teachers, especially, while while they're there those first 3 years, getting their legs under them, figuring out what it means to have your own classroom and to handle all of the different learning styles and learning needs of their students, that they have somebody that's really on their back, at their back, that they can just call them in a moment's notice and say, listen, I've tried to teach this way, this way, this way. These students are just not picking it up. Can you help me to figure out what's another way that I can address this concept to ensure that our students are all able to progress and move forward? I think there's a lot of different ways that we can do this, but we need to recognize that many teachers don't want to go into administration. It's kind of a different personality, I think, of teacher and administrator. So we need to be expanding the ways that they can still have connection to the classroom, but be rewarded for their success and their years of service, so that they can be more of a mentor to the younger teachers.
Okay, thank you. It sounds like to me you're talking about additional ways for additional income for teachers who are willing to take some leadership roles, not necessarily as being a principal, but with that
Right.
lead teacher position and some of the others. So that sounds very interesting to me. Since we're still talking about money, let's talk about Leandro. What do you think about the response that has been so far on Leandro, and what would you want to see done in the future to satisfy Leandro? I know that's a big topic in our state, especially the eastern part of the state.
Yes, I think it's important for everybody to remember that Leandra was begun by one county and then it expanded to 5 counties. And so when we look at those original 5 counties, and the whole purpose of Leandra was saying this: it is not fair that regardless that if you live in one of these counties, that you do not have the same opportunities for classes, the same opportunity for academic rigor, the same opportunity potentially for vocational training if you're in these different areas. And so that was the original intent. It wasn't just to have more funding. It was, how can we retain, how can we get and retain great teachers? Because we are finding that when you are out somewhere that there is not a lot of infrastructure, for instance, if you are somewhere out east and let's say there is not an industry there where your spouse could work, so you are living off of one salary, I think that we do need to be raising the salaries for those harder to keep positions, whether it's because it's rural, but whether it's because you have a lot of students with learning differences, whether it's you have a lot of ESL students, whatever it might be. I think we need to increase the pay for teachers when they're in a harder to recruit and a harder to retain, even higher levels of math and science. We're finding ourselves that we're lacking those within the high school range. I will say this though, most people don't recognize that almost 75% of the original monies that were laid out that needed to be paid to these districts back in 1993 or whenever it was first put up, those have been paid. So that money has not had the label Leandro, but they have been taking the concepts and they've been taking the ideas of wanting to expand opportunity, of wanting to try to recruit and retain teachers in these areas. And if we look honestly at those 5 original counties, 3 of them are getting more than $16,000 and $17,000 per student per year. So when you're looking at the average, we're less than 12,000 at many of the places around the state. But the sad part of that is that increase in funding has not improved their academic proficiency. And so we've got to remember that the whole reason why we make every decision, whether it's financial, whether it's safety, whether it's discipline policies, whether it's teacher, teacher recruitment, it has to be about student success. And so we cannot just continue to dump money into something if we're not seeing the results. And so that's why I'm saying, yes, money is incredibly important, but how we spend the money and the prioritization of our dollars is most important. And students have got to be the first consideration for all decisions in education.
Right. So while you were talking about that, and you were talking about the difficulty that some of our smaller counties have recruiting teachers, I want to know, what is your opinion about teachers that move into our area or who may be attracted by that higher salary, but are coming from other states with their licensure, perhaps in other states? Can you speak to that?
Yes, I'm trying to talk with the General Assembly about how we can increase reciprocity with other states. For instance, as a nurse, my North Carolina nursing license translates to 35 different states. I could essentially move to 35 states with my license, and I could be a nurse in those states. I think we need to expand that, and I think we need to give them the benefit of the doubt. If you have 10 years of teaching somewhere else, I don't think that we should be expecting them to take more courses and pay money out of their pocket in order to get their licensure here in North Carolina. We, especially at this time when we have such a severe teacher shortage. You know, the other thing that I want to do in order to increase teachers coming back is on day one, I really want to talk with teachers. I want to talk with the teachers that have left the field within the last 4 years. And I want to ask them honestly, what could we do to change the dynamics in the schoolhouse to make you come back? Right? What would it be? What would it take to draw you back in so that we can get out of kind of the crisis situation that we're in, where we're lacking so many classrooms that do not have a permanent teacher. The other thing we need to look at is those lateral entry teachers, and how can we do maybe a 3-month program during the summer where somebody that has worked for 25 years and they want to come in and they want to teach something that's totally in line with whatever business that they did, excuse me, or somebody that already has their college degree but doesn't have it in teaching. Is there a 3 or 4 month course that we could put them through that they can get their licensure, that they can get their certificate so that they're ready, they know how to handle the classroom, manage the classroom, you know, deal with everything that is going to be so different from living in the business world to being in the teaching world. I think we need to limit that down because it's hard enough when you come in and you're kind of in as a substitute role, you feel like, and you're trying to figure out all of the, you know, all the hoops that you have to jump through, all the paperwork you have to figure out, how to manage your classroom, how to deal with the teachers, you know, all of those things, how to teach your lesson in different ways so that you can fit all of the learning styles and learning abilities of your class. That's a lot. And then to ask them on top of that to be doing coursework and to be taking tests and to be paying out of their pocket to do that, I think is a burden, and it might be why we have such a high turnover rate for those lateral entry teachers.
Absolutely, absolutely. So while you were talking about that, I was thinking about sub pay. Currently, I know in Wake County, where I'm located, the sub pay is 135 per day. Do you have any thoughts about long-term subs, certified and uncertified, when we're trying to fill some of those hard to fill positions? I see many positions open in special ed.
Yes. And you know, you refer to special ed. I think I'm wanting to get in touch. And actually I spoke with some people in last night, an event I was at that are working with the community colleges. And I really believe that we have got to ensure that any teacher that comes out in North Carolina with a teaching degree has extensive experience in knowing how to handle our exceptional learners as well as ESL, because we just have too many teachers that didn't get that specialty. But right now, we are only increasing the number of students who end up fitting into those categories. And so we need to ensure that our teachers are ready to hit the ground running and feel like they are equipped to help those families and to help those students to get the resources and the services that they need. But to your point of, you know, substitute pay, I really think that if somebody has a degree, if somebody has years of experience, that we should absolutely be increasing that. And to your point, I think we need a complete flip of how we are funding the education system in North Carolina. Right now, it is a top-down process. You fund all of the directors and they're all making their 6 figures, and you fund all the central offices, and you fund all of the superintendents and the assistant superintendents and the principals and the assistant principals, and then you're like, okay, what do we have left? We're going to separate that between our teachers and our bus drivers and our nutritional staff and our counselors and all of the people who are with our children every single day and doing the hard work of helping our kids to succeed. And it needs to be the opposite. It needs to be that we fund all of those those people first and foremost. And then whatever we have left, that's where we have those directorships. And if we have to cut those directorships, if we need to say, listen, if you're passionate about teaching, we really need you to go and to be teaching down at this special led class. We need you to teach the science course. We need you to be doing this. And if your heart truly is about the children and seeing them succeed and helping everyone to get a sound basic education, then they would be more than happy to do that. But that's where we need to be cutting. And that's where the only way we're going to have the funding if we start it at that classroom level. And so that's what I intend to do as superintendent.
That sounds good. While you were talking about the training, two things came to mind. The first was that letters training. If you could just kind of give us your opinion about the letters training, whether that's something you would support keeping or something that you would change.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that I've heard a lot of great things about it, about the science of reading, and now they're talking about the science of math. I think we absolutely need to get back to fact-based math. I think we need to tap into the fact that our kindergarten through fifth graders are very concrete learners. They love to memorize, and we need to ensure that our students have mastered reading, writing, and math before they leave the fifth grade. And so I'd also like to expand how we are diagnosing potential issues with literacy, specifically when you're looking at dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia. Those things tend to have a genetic component. And there is a doctor, Dr. Conway, down in Florida that I've spoken with, and he has a project that's called the Now Project. He's had incredible success in actually implementing some of these different ways of teaching, and you just do it within every typical classroom. So then the children are actually getting what they need, even if they do have the propensity to having some type of a learning difference. And so we need to look at doing that and even instilling that into our trainings at the university and the colleges so that our teachers feel equipped to be able to really teach our children how to read. And the other thing is we need to look at curriculum. And I think we spoke about this before, that it's evidence-based. It's not just research-based. And just to share with everybody the difference, research-based would be you need these 5 components in order to have a great reading program, right? Whether it's spelling and vocabulary and word sounding out words, sight words, whatever it might be. And they say, well, our curriculum has all 5 of these components. That means it's a solid ELA program. Well, I would prefer that we say this program has proven that it's helped children within 1 year to go up 2 grade levels, let's say, in proficiency, right? We have seen incredible leaps and bounds made across all learning areas across the first grade classroom with this program. That's evidence-based. And so it has all of the components of the research, but we actually have proof that it has worked elsewhere. And as superintendent, I will be looking around our country and even around the world to find who has the strongest ELA program, who has the strongest science and math programs, and just duplicate what they're doing. We shouldn't need to recreate the wheel. We have been teaching people how to read, how to do math, right? How to think critically for millennia. And so the people are not that different. Even though we do have screens now attached to our hands, we still do have the same ability to learn. And so that's what I hope to do as superintendent, to really tap into where things are working well. And even within North Carolina, I want to have conversations and look at these schools that have been able to lift their schools out of a low performing, area. And what did you do? And how can we help the other areas in your district close to you to do the same? And so that's what I'm hoping to do, just increase communication and collaboration and partnerships within the state so that every student, regardless of what zip code they live in, gets an excellent education.
Thank you. I want to remind you again, if you think of something while Michelle's speaking, something that you want to ask, make a note, raise your hand using the icon at the bottom, and hopefully we'll have some time at the end for some additional questions. I want to switch topics and move to safety, Michelle.
Okay.
So we had a lot of questions about that tonight. You say that schools aren't safe and that safety is your #1 priority. What do you say? Why do you say they aren't safe? And as superintendent, how would you address that?
Well, as I've traveled around the state for the last 3 years, I have talked to thousands of teachers and students and families, and I'm hearing the same thing. Bullying is on the rise. Students are even afraid to go into bathrooms because it's either drug use or they're worried that they're going to be bullied in the bathrooms. And we can see, statistically speaking, one of the number one reasons why teachers are leaving when they were asked for that teacher satisfaction survey, almost 70% of our teachers said at some point they had been threatened by one of their students with bodily harm. And out of that, almost 50% said that they were harmed by one of their students. That is not a safe environment. And I believe that the number one role of an administrator is to create a culture of civility, of collaboration, of enthusiasm, of excellence. We've got to bring order and discipline into the classroom. And it should not be the onerous task of a teacher to be constantly reaching out to parents. That should be the role of the administrator. The administrator should have the back of the teacher. If there is something that the teacher needs to change, then that needs to be done behind closed doors between the administrator and the teacher. It should not be done in front of the student. It should not be done in front of the teacher. I mean, it's in front of the parent. We have got to start strengthening that teacher and that parent bond, because we know that that is when every student is going to get even better success in the classroom, when there is that partnership and the child is not pitting the teacher against the parents and vice versa. And so when I'm talking about safety, it's two-tiered. It's safety from outside threats, right? We do not want to be responding to a tragedy. We need to be proactive in preventing that. And so that's one of the reasons why I started my school safety advisory council. And it has people on it all the way from DC to people down in Florida that responded to the Parkland tragedy several years ago, as well as people here in North Carolina, people on law enforcement. And they are now compiling the best practices of schools around the country so that we can ensure that our schools are the safest buildings in the state. I tell people, if you look at the population inside the walls of our schools every day, 98, 99% are women and children. And if we cannot ensure that our women and children are safe, then we are failing as a community. And when students and staff do not feel safe, learning is not happening. It's just, I mean, as a nurse, I know what happens in the body during the fight or flight response. When we are seeing this increase in anxiety, this increase in depression, this increase in behavioral issues in the classroom, much of that is because the children don't know what the boundaries are. They change every day from day to day. And if they or one of their peers gets out of control, they need to know that a trusted, peaceful adult is going to come in and going to bring order back, and they're going to protect them. And if we need to do that to ensure that our students and our staff want to be in class, we need to make school fun again. And I mean, gosh, it should be the most fun job to work with kids, right? And that's really why teachers went into it. They didn't want to be on the Fortune 500 club. They love children. They want to see them succeed. They want to be mentors. They want to help them to reach their fullest potential. And we need to set the stage for that to happen in every school across North Carolina.
Right, right. Thank you for that. There are two questions that came to mind when you were talking about that. One was, I'm not sure if you've seen it recently, we had a parent in Cabarrus County address the school board about his daughter, a situation with his daughter in the bathroom,
Mhm.
where a boy was permitted to come into the bathroom and he said he wanted to watch her pee. And so I go back to that Title IX. Can you share some thoughts? What are your thoughts on Biden's Title IX?
Well, I am very concerned, and everyone should be concerned, that Josh Stein is the only attorney general out of the entire Southeast, out of 26 other states, that had said that he was not going to sign the injunction that said we should not expand the word sex to mean, any way that somebody identifies as gender. Here is the issue. We must ensure that every student is protected. And where we can have, if students feel uncomfortable in a certain bathroom, then they should be able to use the staff bathroom, or there should be another bathroom. But here's the issue. We cannot allow our daughters to not have private safety in their private places, period. That is 100%. And if you don't feel like that is going to be, as I said, safety is the number one issue. I have fought for the last 6 years to get boys out of girls' sports, because I understand, and I am friends with the McNabbs. Peyton McNabb still has neurological problems and will for the rest of her life from being hit in the head on a volleyball court in high school from a male player. That is not right. It is not fair. And so we have got to ensure that our daughters and our granddaughters are protected. And if nothing else, if we can't ensure that they're safe, as I said, they're not going to be learning. So I'm going to push back against that. I'm going to I'm going to be the person that is, if they're not getting the response, if parents are not getting response from the principal, if they're not getting response from the school board, they should be able to come up to the superintendent, and I should be able to sit down with all of the parties and to mediate and find out how can we fix this problem. That was one of the things that I heard as I traveled during the primary, that people were frustrated that when they would go to the current superintendent, her response was always, well, that's not my job. I don't have any power to do anything. I can't help you. Well, my response is going to be, if I don't have the power to do that, I'm going to find the person that does, and let's sit down and let's figure out how we can fix this problem.
Right. Well, thank you. I know that for me personally, I've had teachers contact me with concerns and coaches that they're going to be expected to supervise students and they aren't comfortable with that situation, and ensuring that the students would be safe and the students would be comfortable as well.
Well, and let me just share this before we move on to the next point. Many people don't recognize that the expansion of this definition actually puts students and staff at risk
Mhm.
of being charged with sexual harassment or sexual discrimination claims if they misgender or mispronoun someone. So if we already have a teacher shortage, we already have a problem recruiting and retaining good teachers, and we already have a problem with you know, our children learning, do we really want to put this on as another onerous task of dealing with this? We have a very severe issue, and we need to start pushing back. There are two genders, and they're male and they're female, and whatever anyone wants to do when they're 25 or 26 years old and they have their whole frontal lobe, do it then. But all children, they do not feel like men or women. Children have not gone through the most important maturation and growth and development process of puberty when they're in elementary school. We should not be asking them to define themselves at that stage. You are not the same person at 10 that you're going to be at 24. So we need to take that ideology, that philosophy, that burden off of the shoulders of our children and just let them learn.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
So what is your stance on student resource officers? Mo Green has supported the complete removal of all student resource officers from our schools, and his endorsers say that you're intimidating and contributing to kids going to prison. What's your opinion on SROs in the school?
Well, let me just say, first of all, that 70% of every person that is in a prison cannot read above a fourth grade level. So I think this idea that having student resource officers is the reason why our students are going to prison is false. The reason they're going to prison is because they are not getting a quality education. It's because they're being passed along from year to year. And when they get into their high school years, they know that they are not equipped, and they do not know how to exist on their own and to be financially independent, or they're incredibly brilliant and bright and they were not challenged in their younger years, and so they get frustrated and they start acting out. The reason why we need student resource officers in the school, there's several reasons. One is, as I spoke of before, we need to ensure that there are no outside threats that are ever allowed into our schools, our schoolhouses, where it's the majority of women and children. That's number one. The second is, we want for them to be mentors. We want to be strengthening that relationship between law enforcement and the community. We want, especially for our young children who might be coming from a household where there isn't a lot of boundaries, where potentially they don't feel safe. We want them to feel absolutely safe within the walls of our schools. And the other thing is, why aren't we allowing our student resource officers to be the ones that end up being coaches? So then you can have these mentoring relationships with, especially with these young men that need other men, you know, in their lives, if they don't have a dad in their life or whatever it might be. There are so many ways. Driver's ed, teaching health, teaching about the dangers of drugs, teaching, you know, all of these different things. They can be seen. This is not about punitive measures. This is about, we need more people to help to redirect our students, because what we're teaching them is not just academics. We're teaching them how to handle difficulties and conflicts, how to resolve things in a healthy way. how to handle when you feel out of control or you're in a circumstance that makes you feel panicked. How can we give them the tools for success that they're going to need for the rest of their lives? And that's why we need people that are there. So it's not the teachers that have to be the ones, but this is not about classroom discipline in and of itself. If there is anyone that is physically harming another student or another teacher, they need to be held to account, and they need to be held accountable just like if they were doing it in a Walmart or in, another building somewhere else. The laws need to be obeyed inside of our schools as well as outside of our schools, and our student resource officers, I would love to have a statewide student resource office, training that they're actually coming from the DPI, and we pick the people who really have a passion to mentor young people. They really have that personality that they want to be the buddies with these kids. And they're not there to slap handcuffs on people. They are there to be just another example of a person who is on the side of our students. But when it does come to the point that people are in danger, we need them on the scene to be able to help to prevent people from being harmed.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I like the sound of that. You're talking about the development of healthy relationships with resource officers, not seeing them as adversarial. And I
Right.
think that can make a big difference. Um, Talk to me about the situation with school nurses, because many schools share a nurse. Sometimes 3 or 4 schools share one nurse. What can you do about it?
Well, I think that every school should have 2 nurses, especially in the elementary school ages. Accidents can happen. That's when a lot of even diagnoses happen. I mean, some children don't know they have a seizure disorder until they're 5 and 6 years old. They don't know that they might be, have type 1 diabetes or whatnot. There are things that I think it's important, especially when we have so many more children that are being diagnosed with different illnesses and different issues. It's so important that a nurse knows that child, knows the family, and has that communication. Right now, I've been hearing that we're expecting administrators as secretaries to give medications, to give insulin shots. That is incredibly dangerous. It's really dangerous for our students, but it's also we're looking at putting ourselves up for potential lawsuits if something should go wrong. That needs to be only with medical personnel, and they can even be helping to teach classes on health, to teach classes that the students are going to need about nutrition, how your body feels and how you function when you eat well, when you get exercise, when you get rest, when you drink water, all of these things, so that our kids can learn not just, as I said before, not just academics, but also how are you going to take care of that body that God's given you, so that you can be sure that you are as healthy and you are functioning at on all cylinders, whether it's academically, whether it's psychologically, or whether it's physically.
Sounds great. I know we had nurses in schools when I was coming along, and it was great.
Yeah.
That I have seen change in the last 10 years.
Yes.
Um, what is your opinion on the ELL, or language immersion program? That's kind of changing. I want to tack back to academics for a moment.
Sure.
Talk to me about your thoughts about that.
Well, I've heard great things about people that are kind of in that English Spanish immersion where you have, a mix of non-English speakers as well as English speakers. I've heard good things about that. I will say this. In Charlotte Mecklenburg, it was just reported a few weeks ago by on the news that Charlotte Mecklenburg now has 40% of their students are non-citizens and they are not speaking English as their first language. That has put an incredible drain on the system, an incredible strain on our teachers. And I really would like to talk to the General Assembly about the idea of, if a student comes to the United States and does not speak English, they don't speak, read, or write English and understand English, I would like to see at least that first semester, if not the first year, be really focused just on English language learning. They could still be participating in extras, but I would like to see a hold on their core classes until they can get up to speed in English. I'm hearing an awful lot from teachers in elementary school that say they have everything from students that don't speak any English to the gifted and talented to the children with behavioral issues, as well as developmental delays, as well as typical learners and the gifted and talented students. And it really is completely impossible to get all of those students the extent of the services and what they need for them to be able to be challenged. And so, and they're saying that many times those students are just sitting, those students that don't speak English are sitting on a screen pretty much all day long. And I will tell you too, there was a teacher who is in Charlotte Mecklenburg who reached out to me and said she had taught for 26 years and she was leaving because she has been being forced to give her ESL students a 70 and nothing less than a 70, even though they have not learned anything in her class. And when she went to the principal and said, I cannot do this. I've got to tell the parents that they are not ready to move on to the next grade. They said, and if you reach out to the parents, then you will lose your job. So before she was fired, she ended up leaving. And understand that is not an isolated case. We have been just pushing children along year after year. And the reason why I know that is because we have increased graduation rates. And as a matter of fact, my opponent, that is his big claim to fame in his time, 10 years ago when he was in Guilford County as the superintendent. He claims that he raised the graduation rate 18 percentage points. The problem, Janet, and everyone else is they didn't change proficiency rates at all. So you essentially push these children across a graduation stage and you said, here's your certificate of graduation. And it meant nothing because they did not have the skill set. And then they think something's wrong with them. They think that they're the odd person out because everybody else graduated. Why don't I know how to fill out, know how to fill out an employee form to get a job? I don't know anything about writing a check. I don't know anything about how I can go out and get a job. I don't even know my multiplication facts, for goodness sake, and I can't tell time on an analog clock. That is our failure. That's what I'm saying. The system is failing. If we are telling our students that you are ready to be an independent adult, and yet they do not have the skills that they should have from a 6th or 7th grader.
Right. I think it's pretty obvious that what we've been doing for those students is not working.
Right.
We have to tack. So along that same vein, what do we do now about the students that are applying to get into university or community college programs, and they're frankly, they're just not ready. They need a lot of remedial programs just to be able to prepare them for the college level courses that they want to take. How would you address that?
Well, I think we really need to tap into our community colleges. I think that we might potentially have to say, you guys need a year in community college, and we're really going to focus on specifically, it's going to be reading, math, and writing. We cannot have students in their sophomore and junior year of college that cannot write a 500-word essay. That is just not going to serve them well in order to be able to compete in the marketplace when they are adults. So I will say, I know that the college and university committees in the General Assembly have actually been discussing what they're going to do with those first 2 years, because that they want everybody to try a little bit of everything, right? So they want you to take a sociology class and a psychology class and an economics class and an English class and a math class. And they're looking at maybe refining that a little bit so that we can get a better feel of what direction the students are wanting to go, and then say, okay, if you want to do education, you should be focusing on child development. You should be really taking hard courses about reading and teaching to read and mathematics and different ways to teach math to people that are different like getting those things solid, because we are doing no one any favors when we ask them to pay $250,000 and then now you're going to get the college degree and you're not going to have the skills in order to be able to compete with not only people from other states, but people from around the world. We have fallen in the last 50 years, 60 years, 70, 55 years. In the last 55 years since they started the U.S. Department of Education, we have gone from number 2 in the world for our public school system to number 43 in the world. And that is what I'm talking about when I'm saying we are failing our students. This is not their fault. They don't know what we're not teaching them. And so so we do have some catch up to do, and I think that we're going to have to focus on those college those college courses, specifically in that freshman year, that's going to look at being remedial, or we're going to need to say, you know what, you take this test, will hold your place in the freshman class, but if you can't pass this reading and writing and math test, then we're going to have you go for a year into the community college in your, in your area and get up to speed and take this again, and we will hold your position in the college.
Right. Do you think that with the expansion of the voucher program that charter schools or private schools are going to help with that? And can you speak to the funding issue as well as their accountability issue?
Sure. Sure. Let me say this off the bat. I think anyone that is getting taxpayer money should be held accountable. But I will say that the General Assembly has actually done something. The funding that is coming for these opportunity scholarships in particular is not coming from the current budget that is going to traditional public education. It is coming out of the general fund. So on the short session years of which we are in right now, they look in the fall as to how much money has come in from taxes, and then they have this pot of money, and they're determining what the budget is going to be for the next year. And what they have done with these opportunity scholarships is, for instance, there are 4 tiers of scholarship money. So I do think that there should have been a cap. Like if you make more than $500,000 a year, I don't think that you should be getting a scholarship. But I will say this. I think that when you look at tier 1, that's the lowest income bracket, and then it goes upward, and you get less money the higher the bracket you go into. But this is something that people don't know. So let's say in Wake County, we are given $12,000 a year per student. Well, if a student goes and gets an opportunity scholarship, and say they get $4,000 for that opportunity scholarship to go to a private school, the other $8,000 is going to go into the traditional public school where that student was supposed to be going, was districted. So what happens in that is you're not taking money away from the traditional public school. It's called not holding guilty. I think that's the term that they use. So essentially that $12,000, because they're saying there's this many students that are school aged in Wake County. So it's not really attached to that student per se. They're just saying, we think we're going to have, let's say, 25,000 kids in elementary school. So we go, okay, 25,000 times 12,000, and that's the money you're getting. Now, when a student is leaving and gets an opportunity scholarship and gets into a private school, what they do is they say, we're going to give, the most they get is $4,000. So if you're in that tier 1, you get 4,000, but that other 8,000 is staying in that traditional public school. And now they don't have to teach that child. They're getting $8,000, and it's actually saving the state money, because that money's going to the private school and the parents are paying the difference in the private school, but they're still getting $8,000 of tax money, and they don't have the student in the seat. So that is what they are doing. So there's a very big misconception that this is taking money from the traditional schools and they're not going to have the funding that they need for the students that are still there. And it's simply not true. I'll say this also, we have got to build a bridge between the charter schools and the public schools. They are both under the same umbrella, and there's so much competition there. And they think, one is being held accountable, the other one's not being held accountable. And we need to look at this, that whatever is best for the student is what we're doing. And we need to be working together to ensure that every student gets a great education. And I would like to see that opportunity scholarship money going first and foremost to the 37 districts that have no charter schools. So is it fair to leave a student in a failing school if there is only a private school, but the parents cannot afford it? Is that really what we're saying? And what people need to recognize, and what my opponent does not understand, as he is vehemently opposed to all opportunity scholarships, he does not understand 75% of the people receiving opportunity scholarships are minority students. And last year, our minority students, our Black and brown students, were reading and doing math at only 9 and 14% proficiency. That is an absolute travesty. And for you to say you must stay in the traditional public school system because we want your money and not give them an opportunity to go somewhere else where they can get educated if it's not working in the traditional schools is wrong on all counts.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Sure.
Thank you. I have one final question. There are a lot more questions I could ask tonight, but I know we're going to run out of time, and I see two hands up that I want us to have to take time for. My final question for you, and that we received, was about Mo Green. Mo Green has repeatedly attacked you in numerous ads. In general, what is your response to how he's run his campaign versus how you've run yours?
Well, it's sad to me that we have such an opportunity. As I've traveled the state, as I said, education is on the minds of everyone. It doesn't matter your race, religion, or your politics. Everyone is concerned that our students aren't safe, that their mental health is in decline, and that they're not getting an academically sound education. And so it's sad to me that we can't discuss issues, that every time an issue is brought up, his response is, if we just would fully fund it, if we would just fully fund it. And I keep saying, listen, we could dump $1 million into every first grade classroom and the children won't know how to read and they won't know how to count it. It's not just about dumping more money into the system. And so when you see all of these politics and all of this, all of these attacks on me, it's like, I'm the reason why kids can't read and do math. I'm the reason why the 1,500 teachers were assaulted last year. Really? I'm the reason why there's an 84% increase in drug use and crime in the schools? No, it's the system is the problem. And when you look at the millions of dollars that are being dumped into attack ads on me, you have to ask yourself, sir, you say that you want more money for our schools. Why are you spending it in this way? I am representing the people of North Carolina. I am the one that I'm getting personal donations. I don't have any special interest groups. No political party is endorsing me. I mean, is sponsoring me and giving me big checks. I answer to no one except the people of North Carolina. I am fighting for the students. I am fighting for change, and I am fighting to ensure that every student in North Carolina gets an excellent education because that is our promise to them in our Constitution. And my opponent cannot even speak to anything that he wants to see changed beyond he wants more money. His entire attack has been that I don't celebrate a system. I'll tell you, one of my greatest qualifications is that I am not beholden to a bureaucratic system that is robbing from our students and our staff and making special interest groups and pet projects and political entities wealthy off of their backs.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle.
Sure.
I appreciate that. I see a couple of hands up. Let's see. Is it Dr. Patterson? I think you had a question. Let's see if we can get her unmuted. There we go.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear
Hi.
me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. I'm excited to be here and thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. One of my questions actually is about national boards. I know you've spoken a lot about the advanced teaching roles and ways to increase teacher pay, which is phenomenal. And me working with human resources with teachers in a district in the state, one of my big pushes is with national board teacher certification because it does allow for a 12% increase in teacher pay in our state, especially since our state currently does not pay for master's degrees.
Mm-hmm.
I was just curious about your advocacy or your thoughts on the state supporting or somehow being behind or backing teachers in paying for national board certification.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great idea for this reason. As I was talking about nursing, that we have a national board, and that's what allows us to have this reciprocity, right? And because it makes sure that everybody is kind of on the same page. And so I think if we would incorporate that even into recognizing if that is our goal at the end of a 4-year education degree, that we want to have as many people being able to get that certification. I think if you're enrolled in a college or a university, that should be as part of the payment plan, right? that you should be able to get that board certification and take that test at the end of the year. Now, it shouldn't be a requirement, I don't think, in order to be a, in order to be a teacher, because we do have, probably issues with people taking tests and that type of thing. I understand that. But I think as we raise the bar of expectation, we are going to attract people that are even more qualified to be able to teach the next generation. And so I think that's going to be, it's going to be something that allures people into the profession rather than detracts from people entering it. So I would definitely like to look at that and how we can make that, because I think that would help us incredibly to be recruiting teachers from other states, right? As well as raising the bar here in North Carolina so that we know that we are on a level playing field with everybody else. And I think that's only going to enhance student outcome as well.
Just to piggyback on that, while you're thinking about it, Michelle, I hope you'll keep in mind for those teachers that are already working in the system who may want to go ahead and pursue their national boards. I know that there are some districts that would help fund that. Maybe that could be a statewide initiative.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if anybody wants to, to improve their skills and whatnot, I think we should absolutely be on board with supporting that. I mean, other businesses do that, right? They pay people to go and get more degrees so that they can come back and work in a different realm, in a different stratus. Yeah.
That sounds great. I think I see another hand up, Michael Chapman. Hi, Michael. Let's see if we can get you unmuted. Thank you, Dr. Patterson.
Yes, thank you.
Hey, Michelle, how are you this night?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Wonderful. I'm in one of the worst school systems in the state, even though it has quite a bit of schools here. And we have one-on-one computers for every student in this district, which is over 18,000. Yet our numbers haven't increased, as I truly believe that it's become a babysitting tool for a lot of teachers. Not all teachers, but the traditional teachers stick with the books, as the new teachers have a tendency to rely on computers. And we also spend 2 years ago, and they're asking every 3.5 years, $13 million for new computers. When there's really not much changed in the curriculum on them, they just think they have to have them to sell them. Second fold part to this question, a lot of states in the union in the United States, I think there's over about 18 states now that have legislation to prohibit cell phone usage in schools nowadays, as that has become a major problem, especially in the older grades, which is used for bullying, drug paraphernalia, all types of things. Is there going to be, would you have a push for getting rid of these cell phones and maybe make them only available to those who are passing their grades?
That's a good, I've always said, even as a parent, probably the best thing about a phone was the ability to take it away from your child when they needed some discipline. But I will say, I absolutely agree with you. I think that there is no reason, especially within the K-5 system, for us to have handheld devices at all. We are really damaging our children in the most vulnerable developmental stages. We are not helping them when they don't have face-to-face interaction. And I think we're even hindering our teachers from knowing how well a student is understanding a concept when it's behind a screen. There's a lot that you can learn as a teacher just walking around a classroom when they have a piece of paper and a pencil. You can see who's understanding the concepts and who isn't. And so that lends itself to then you're going to know before March or April, when you take those end of grade tests, whether or not somebody has really been absorbing things. But to your point, I absolutely agree that we need to look at getting those cell phones out of the hands of our middle schoolers and our high schools, at least during the teaching day. And I think that even if that looks like it's in your locker or it's in a box in every room, and that's where it stays the entire time during teaching time, because you still want to have that ability to contact your parents or whatever it might be, we do need to look at that. And I think that should be, we as the DPI should set forth some parameters, and then we need to let the districts decide on their own. I think that needs to be something that the parents and the teachers should have input on, and that should be kind of on the back of the board to determine that. But to your point, I have said again and again, the millions of dollars that we're spending, not just on the devices themselves, but on the expansion of the 5G network, on the amount of staff that we need to be ensuring that those are up and running every single day, is astronomical. And when we're looking at the need for more money and the need to be able to pay our staff, I think that that is one place that we could actually find a significant amount of money and help our children in the process.
Mhm. I want to make sure I understood you. It seems like earlier you talked about, or maybe it was at another town hall, you aren't opposed to, say, a computer station in a classroom, say 6 computers or laptops for research, but not becoming so dependent on for the delivery of instruction by devices,
Well,
which
I
is
think
happening.
Yeah, I think in elementary school, I think you can have a computer lab. You go to the lab like you do to math and art. I mean, to art and PE and music. So that can just be used maybe once a week that you go and you end up doing something that is a program that's only accentuating what you've been learning in the classroom, and it's something that's fun. I disagree, honestly, with computers in the classroom in elementary school. I can see once you get to 7th and 8th grade that if you're wanting to learn how to research and do papers and whatnot, having them in the class so that the children can get on them. But I don't agree that we should have that. I don't think that they're necessary in the elementary grade levels. But I would be, yeah, absolutely in favor of that. Or, I mean, my son goes to a private school and they have a computer lab, but it's outside. It's perfect because it's kind of outside in the hallway. They have like a little niche and it's near the offices, so nobody's in a closed space. So everything that you're doing on the computer, anybody can walk back behind you and see it. And I think that that's only going to protect our children. And also there's always staff there. So if you have a problem and you have a question, then they're there to help you with that. And I think that, we want them to be able to use the tools and use them well and learn how to use them. But I just think right now, we thought it was going to be a great idea, but it really has not proven out that it's
Mhm.
helped our children academically in
You're
the
right.
younger
You're
grades.
right.
Yeah.
Well, my timer went off. So we've had a great hour here. There are still more questions that we did not get to tonight. If you would like, you can email Michelle, contact her through her website. Michelle, you want to give that website?
Sure. It's Morrow, the number 4nc.com. That's MORROW, the number 4nc.com.
Right. Send her a message through the website and she will do her best to get back with you. Michelle, I want to thank you. I want to thank you first for your time tonight.
Sure.
I want to thank you for your courage. These are very divisive times, and I appreciate the courage and determination, your willingness to serve families and children in North Carolina. And I look forward to seeing more of you in the future. I just think we have good things ahead of us.
We
Thank you.
do. We do. Yep.
Thank,
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming on.
thank you so much for attending.